On the line, ladies and gentlemen, his name is Armstrong Williams. How you doing, Armstrong?
I am doing fine, Sir Parr.
All right. When the insurrection went down, you were there at the Capitol. Where were you?
Well, I was at the Capitol, Russ, as a broadcast journalist to cover the protest. And so, what was fascinating is that we had been covering it all day, and it was just natural that we ended up at the Capitol and everyone that was there. And we were back and forth on the steps of the Capitol, and people were running up the steps trying to take pictures because they said it had never been that close to the Capitol before. But what was interesting about it, I noticed a lot of military people on the Capitol steps, dressed in fatigues, gas mask on, covered, and it was just an eerie feeling. And I realized that once, the president had been maligning and undermining his vice president all during that week, saying he had the kind of powers that he did not have. He had the power to decertify Biden as the president and put it in his court to make him president again. And none of this was true. And many people thought that, and I was also when the president spoke at the White House, and he encouraged people to go protest. But I think more importantly than that was what happened when there was a social media alert on our Apple devices, and it said that Vice President Pence would not stand in the way of President-elect Biden becoming president of the United States. And everything has changed, man. Everything just seemed like people just transformed. And so what happened was there were men and women, you could tell, of military background, and drew Americans that had from all over the country. The conversations was fine, but once it was the realization that Pence was not going to do the president's bidding, the experience became very unsettling, and as a result, it was very unsettling what happened next. And it was so distressing, my eyewitness accounting of what I witnessed. And first and foremost, let me start by saying that, I'm a patriot who has always venerated our military and the men and women who willingly lay down their lives so that we might live ours. And that very fact makes it so painful, even for me, to have to acknowledge, but it's just the truth. The riot, and it was a riot, was in part led and organized by men and women with ties to the military complex. Because when we were standing there on the steps of the Capitol and they started shouting, I found myself between the protesters and the Capitol Center door with 2 or 3 Capitol Hill police, and they started shoving and pushing. You saw this guy in the gas mask. You saw them reach into their backpack and pull out this mace, and they started spraying the police. And then somebody said, where's the mace? Who has the mace? Who has the mace in their bag? Who has the mace? And they started pulling it out, and they started spraying it. And it just became chaotic.
They were prepared, Armstrong. They were prepared.
Russ, even deeper than that. They had ropes in their backpack. You could see there were ladders lined up along the Capitol. And you ask yourself, in the most secured area with 535 members of Congress, how in the world can anybody get on the Capitol premises with the ladders and no one not saying anything? And then you take the ropes out of your backpack and you start scaling the walls of the Capitol. And while I have never served myself, I know many veterans, Russ, and active servicemen. I consider them friends, and I hold them in the highest esteem. They're some of my best sources. I know how they speak. I know how they dress. I can identify a service member or former member in a cross simply by observing their distinct mannerism. And let me give you an example. The way that military officers describe problems as challenges, the way they use the 24-hour clock, the way that they are constantly observing and taking in those around them, and the way that they talk about logistics and tactics, you can hear it. The shorter, more direct sentences that they use when involved in a job, from their choice of attire and footwear to the types of backpacks and the types of tattoos. If you have spent time amongst military personnel, identifying them becomes almost second nature. And my experience and observation at the riots exposed the hard truth that a lot of us in this country must confront. There were, without a doubt, many military men and women at the Capitol and law enforcement, unfortunately. They were absolutely involved in the violence that ensued. They were using tactic methods to sow chaos. They brought pepper spray and used it against the Capitol Police. They worked in shifts. They carried gear and they came prepared. This was a riot that was well organized and well orchestrated, and it was premeditated. I have no doubt that 90% of the people engaged in that rioting and leading the crowd were Trump supporters, and they were Trump supporters with military training. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah, I guess not. Army, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad you're safe, man, and thank you for giving us the time for that firsthand account.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.